And we are learning today that the U.S. agreed this week to call off joint military training exercises involving B-52 bombers scheduled with South Korea. According to U.S. officials quoted in the Wall Street Journal, the decision was made after the South Korean government, quote, expressed concerns that it could generate tensions before the summit meeting between President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The drills were supposed to include the United States, South Korea, and Japan. The move comes after North Korea canceled talks planned with South Korean officials this week and even threatened to axe the much-anticipated Trump-Kim meeting scheduled for next month. For more, we turn to investigative journalist Gareth Porter. Always a pleasure to have you in studio, Gareth. How major is this decision, and what does it tell us about North Korea's negotiating position at the moment?
Well, first of all, I think it does indicate the Trump administration's seriousness about these negotiations. I mean, there's no doubt that this was one of the things that South Korean President Moon wanted. He had been talking with North Korea about, at some point at least, sort of downsizing the joint U.S.-South Korean military exercises. And I think this is a gesture that he asked for the United States to make as part of the overall movement toward the summit meeting. And in that regard, I think that it is a very reasonable one, because the United States government has known for many years that the North Koreans are really spooked by these nuclear-related exercises. Right. When the U.S. planes are nuclear capable, this is when the North Koreans clearly are alarmed, and they've made it known over the years that that's the case. So it's a very reasonable gesture to make in advance of the summit.
Sure, though it wasn't only these planned drills which had the North Koreans upset this week. They were also irked by comments made recently by Trump's national security advisor, John Bolton, who said in a recent interview that the Libya model of denuclearization may be in store for North Korea. In response, the first Vice Minister of Affairs of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea made a public statement declaring, quote, "It is a ridiculous comedy to see that the Trump administration, claiming to take a different road from the previous administration, still clings to the outdated policy on the DPRK. If the Trump administration takes an approach to the DPRK-U.S. summit with sincerity for improved DPRK-U.S. relations, it will receive a deserved response." However, saying if they're trying to drive us into a corner to force our unilateral nuclear abandonment, we will no longer be interested in such dialogue and will even reconsider the summit. What are your thoughts on that, Gareth?
I think it's very interesting that actually Bolton made this statement more than 2 weeks before. And so the North Koreans very carefully, I think, considered how they were going to respond to it. This is not just a spur-of-the-moment sort of emotional response. They were very carefully picking their words. And I think the intention here was to let the Trump administration, President Trump himself personally, know that he needs to rein in John Bolton, and he needs to understand that the whole idea of the Libyan model is out. They are not going to agree to the idea that the United States is going to demand that they turn over all their nuclear weapons, and then the United States will decide what to do to compensate or to reassure North Korea. There has to be a much more fairer model of denuclearization. And I think that is increasingly, it's clear that Pompeo is thinking along those lines based on his comments over the weekend.
Finally, Gareth, you covered negotiations leading to the establishment of the Iran deal, an agreement which President Trump threw some gasoline on in recent weeks. How do you think those developments are going to be impacting the situation with Korea?
Clearly, this is not going to do the U.S.-North Korean talks any good, despite the fact that that's the argument that the Trump administration is now trying to use to justify it, at least in part. Definitely, the North Koreans are committed to these talks, and therefore it's not going to prevent them from taking place. But it's just another one of those factors that in the back of their mind is going to be a question about the seriousness of Trump and his government as negotiators with a country which they have not had good relations with in the past. And so, you know, they're going to pay attention definitely to what's happened with Iran and say they're going to be on their guard.
And certainly making it clear this week they're expecting concessions from the United States as well. Investigative reporter Gareth Porter, thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Anya.